Hello and welcome to the Supervision of Peer Workforce Conference. I'm Dasha Hobson with SHARE. This session is Peer Lens on Supervision with Jessica Wolf. Jessica Wolf is Principal of Decision Solutions Consulting and Assistant Clinical Professor in the Yale Department of Psychiatry. She has actively promoted peer workforce development for many years. Jessica's lived experience of mental health conditions, trauma, and recovery informs her consulting and commitment to strengthen the peer workforce. All of the sessions at today's event are being recorded. There is one session that will not be recorded, but you will be informed if you are attending that session. I'm going to begin recording now. All of today's presentations will be available at a later time on the SHARE website. If you have any questions or technical problems directly in the chat, you will see I have the SHARE background and my name is Dasha Hobson. It'll say host next to my name. Everyone, please remain on mute unless you're contributing at the request of the presenter. At the end of the presentation, we will be providing a feedback evaluation for you to share your feedback at the end of this presentation. Please take the time to give us your feedback. We'll use that information to improve and have more conferences at a later date.
Dasha, are we ready to start, or? You want to bring up the PowerPoint?
Libby, I'm sorry, just give me 1 second.
Sure.
Yeah.
Did you send me the PowerPoint? Sorry.
I did. I emailed it to you. Did you not get it?
No.
All right, let me see if I can.
Okay, there we go.
You got it. You want me to get it, Libby, or?
It's here now.
Okay, thank you very much. While we're getting it together, I'm just really pleased to be here this morning, and we are going to do a little thing for people to kind of identify whether you are peer specialists or supervisors, so we can kind of get a sense of who's in the Zoom room. And I was thinking, gee, we should really ask where everybody is from. We already know that there are 33 states represented, which is terrific. When you write in the chat, I see that people are putting where you're from, so that's very helpful. And we'll get started as soon as we can.
Okay. So maybe I'll just go ahead and share.
Okay,
Sorry about that, Libby.
me too. You'll probably do it more quickly than I.
Let's see.
That's it.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Okay, thank you. Do you, one of you advance it? Shall I tell you when I'm ready or?
Yeah, you'll just have
Okay.
to tell me because I'm not,
Okay, sure. So this is the peer lens on supervision. And there's my name, Jessica Wolf. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. And this is going to be fun. So we have a poll. Are we set up with the poll to come up?
let's see. Maybe we can answer this one in the chat. Jessica?
Well, it'll be a little difficult because
Libby, I'm launching the poll right now.
You are? Okay.
Yes.
so if I read the question, will it be posted so that people can answer on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so the first one is, are you a peer support worker, peer specialist, or recovery coach? And the answer would be yes or no. So the poll should come up onto the screen so that people can respond. If it doesn't, then we'll do a different way. But the other thing we could do, Libby, is we could have look at the whole screen and just have people raise their hand, just so we could get a ballpark idea. Would that work?
Yeah, that would be fine.
If everybody puts yourself in gallery view, if you go to the top of your screen where it says view, there's a little box. If you click on side by side, so we can all see each other for those people, and then turn on your video if you can. And then the first question, are you a peer support worker, peer specialist? All right, so we're just going to do the yes. If you are a peer support worker, then go down into reactions in the chat. Is it in the chat where you do the reactions? Let's see.
Yeah, there's a reactions button and you lift your hand.
Okay, at the bottom, there's a reactions button, right? As many people know. So any kind of positive sign, just so we get a feeling for how many people are peer support folks, peer support specialists, workers, and so forth. Okay, so we've got some sense of that. The next one is, are you certified? So for those of you who are peer support workers, are you certified? Okay, here's the poll. Okay, can everybody see the poll? Okay, so just answer it. In other words, if you are a peer support worker, click on yes, and we'll get a sense of the whole group. And if not, click on no. So we then end do we end the poll for just the first question?
Did you want one question at a time?
Yes. Okay, that's fine. That's great. Let's go on. Very good. So we see that more people are not peer support workers and more people are not certified. And there are more supervisors who are answering so far, which is good for the presentation. And in terms of, have you had training in supervision? Sort of 50-50, not quite. Some people have, some people haven't. Have you received training in peer worker supervision? You can see that it's like a fourth, a little over of our total group. It's changing as we speak. This is fascinating to do this. So this kind of supports our interest in having this kind of conference and workshop, because the issue of what's different or special about supervising peer support workers is here. People aren't really super trained about this. Okay, and the last, let's see, number 6, if you are a supervisor, are you a trained clinician? Yes, more are clinicians than not, which is what I would tend to think would be the case. And what do you hope to get? All right, that one you can put in the chat. Anything you'd like to get out of the workshop very quickly. And when I say go, then everybody types it in, and that's something called a chatterfall, which will give us a sense of where everyone is. Thank you very much. This is very useful. Okay, we'll end the poll. You can type in the chat anything particular you're hoping to get out of the workshop, and we'll go on to the next slide. Thank you very much for the technical assistance, and thank you everybody for participating.
Do you want to hit us to hit enter yet?
Yes, you can hit enter, and let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
Enter in the chat so we can all take a look at the chat. How to balance between peer workers' mental health and their job expectations. Better sense of how to be a peer worker, how to supervise peer support, hear about innovation, best practices, we'll try. Peer supervisor training, stay current on best practices, etc. I will read the rest of these later, I hope, but thank you very much. And we can close the poll now. Okay. So what is peer lens? You know, the title of this is a peer lens on supervision. So why did we talk about that? So I just want to do a little linguistic stuff here very briefly. The word peer usually means, it refers to people in the same circumstance. It can have nothing to do with mental health or substance use. It could be any kind of peer. You know, if you and I are interested in scuba diving, we could be peers who are interested in scuba diving. So it kind of means equal colleagues. In the mental health and substance use field, peer has come to mean a person with lived experience of mental health and or substance use conditions. You'll notice in all languages, you know, we start developing words that have a meaning different than what they had in the first place. So this is an example of that. A peer specialist or peer support worker is someone who has lived experience of these conditions and is trained to help other peers in similar circumstances and recovery journeys. So peer supervisor is also an ambiguous term because it may refer to supervising others who are peers or colleagues, like if I'm running a scuba diving training program and I'm a supervisor, I'm supervising my peers who are also scuba divers, right? But if we're talking, when we're talking about peers who are folks with lived experience of behavioral health, mental health, substance use conditions, then that is a specific function of a supervisor in a specific role. So it may mean supervising peer specialists, peer support workers, recovery coaches. So a more specific term for that is to say supervisor of peer specialists, peer support workers, recovery coaches, and so forth. It may sound like splitting hairs, but it isn't, since we need to make clear what we're doing and what the purpose of what we're doing is. So a peer lens really means looking at supervision from the perspective of peer support. And please feel free to raise questions in the chat. It's difficult. I'm doing this alone with technical support, but I won't be able to give the chat the full attention in the moment, but we'll hopefully get to it. So I hope we've made clear a little bit about why peer lens and differentiating peer support supervisors. Okay, we'll go to the next slide, please. So today, what we're trying to do, I'm just repeating what I said, is to understand peer perspectives when supervisors are peer supervisors, that is, supervisors who themselves are peer support workers or have disclosed lived experience and have been trained in the field, and or they are non-peer, traditionally trained clinical supervisors. And today's group is a mix of all of the above. So we have some folks who are peer support workers. We have some supervisors who are also peer support workers. And we have possibly a majority of supervisors who aren't, who are trained as clinicians in one form or another. Now they find out, oh, your job is to supervise peer support workers. It's like apples and oranges, right? So we have to meet where we all are and try to help everybody work collaboratively in a constructive way. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. So I'm going to do some review of peer support principles and some reference to peer supervision resources, and there's resources listed at the end of the presentation that you will have access to. And I've tried to make them user-friendly because most of them are online. We'll explore their use in supervising peer workers, understand and address challenges when non-peer supervised peer workers. And then I'm hoping we're going to have time, and we're going to use this evaluation supervisor self-assessment form that was developed by Brass Tacks, which I'll explain in a moment. And that, I think that I'm hoping this will be a takeaway for everybody, because it's really, I think it's a very good form to help us look at, well, what do I know, what I don't know, what do I need to learn? And Brass Tacks stands for Bringing Recovery Supports to Scale, Technical Assistance Center Strategy. As you know, I'm sure we all love to develop these initials for different things. And of course, Brass Tacks is a nice sounding term. So this was funded by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Authority, the Feds, SAMHSA. And it's really a very useful tool. And I'm looking forward to using it together so that you all can benefit from its use as well. So I will go fairly quickly over the rest of it so that we can get to that. All right, we'll go to the next slide. Peer worker principles and values. So there are many different definitions of this. I picked these. The role of the peer support worker is offering and receiving help based on shared understanding, respect, and mutual empowerment between people in similar situations. Peer support is a system of giving and receiving help based on key principles, including shared responsibility and mutual agreement of what is helpful. All of this is taken from the federal definitions, and I want you to know how important I feel this is, because at the beginning of the development of this workforce, it was radical in the sense that the idea of people who have lived experience of mental health and substance use conditions, being employed to help other people was radical. It isn't radical anymore when the government supports it. But I just think it's really important for people to understand that it's been a long road and we have a lot of challenges ahead because, as I said before, when people are trained in one sort of mindset or orientation, as high quality clinical people are, and then they're told, well, you need to work in partnership and also you need to supervise people who have been trained in a very different headset. A lot of learning and collaboration and understanding needs to come on all parties, by all parties in order for this to succeed. And this isn't just true in mental health, it's true in any place. I mean, our country is struggling with so many aspects of the same issue. When people are coming from different viewpoints, how do we work together? Okay, we'll go to the next slide. And activities, so this is a whole other important area to think about. What makes something be the role and responsibilities of a peer worker versus a case manager versus someone who is a clinician? Very important to figure this out because there are differences. And we don't want to blur boundaries, which is one of the issues that happens when people's roles are not well defined. So here are some of the activities. Advocacy, linkage to resources, sharing experience, community and relationship building, group facilitation, skill building, mentoring, goal setting. It's like walk on water, right? Planning, supervising, training, gathering resource information, administering programs or agencies, educating the public and policymakers work to raise awareness. This is again from SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration. But we're going to go on to some other ones because they will help, I think, in terms of differentiating. So what's different between, why are peer workers different than case managers or clinically trained folks? So we'll go to the next slide. So when we get to core competency principles and values, we begin to see some of the distinctions, okay? Recovery oriented. Again, I've been around long enough to know that recovery wasn't always considered possible for people who have mental health and substance use conditions. And for those of you who are younger or earlier in the, sooner in the field, just always remember that these thoughts and ideas didn't exist some years ago, and we've had to fight to get them included. And this is really important because there are plenty of people who were trained in an era where the attitude was somebody has a condition and they're always going to have the condition, and they're who's even thinking about their life? They are their condition. Well, we know that's not true. However, it's really important to figure out what to do about that. So peer workers work in a mutual way with folks they're helping. And that's a different experience than if you are trained to be an expert and you're conveying your expertise to someone else. So this is part of the challenge that we have in working together with people who are trained in different ways. Person-centered, same thing. We could spend a whole workshop on what does it mean to be person-centered. It means that the person we are trying to serve is in the driver's seat, figuring out what they need in their lives. And the job of people helping them is to help guide them. It's not to drive the car for them. Voluntary is another aspect of this. Relationship focused, trauma informed. By the way, there's someone here today giving a presentation saying trauma informed isn't good enough. We need to have a healing approach. So look at that term trauma informed and go to that workshop and learn some new information that's being offered. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Here are some other things that peer support workers do. Engages peers in collaborative and caring relationship, provides support, shares lived experiences of recovery, personalizes peer support, supports recovery planning, links to resources, services, and supports. And again, I'm just talking, right? I mean, you know that learning what this really means has to do with working one-to-one with other people. So I don't have any illusion that by stating these things, we have to do things in order to really experience them. Okay, next slide. Additionally, provides information about skills related to health, wellness, and recovery, helps peers manage crises. Again, peer manages the crisis with the help of someone else, values communication, supports collaboration and teamwork, promotes leadership and advocacy, growth and development. Okay, we'll go on. Now, the peer support core values provided by INAPS, which is the International Association of Peer Supporters, which is a totally peer-run organization that is now known as NAPS, National Association of Peer Supporters. And quite a few people who have been involved with NAPS are here today giving presentations. They established guidelines for peers and also supervisors. So these are the core values, and some of this is repetitive, obviously. Voluntary, hopeful, open-minded, empathetic, respectful, facilitate change, honest and direct. It's like Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. Go ahead to the next slide. Peer support is mutual and reciprocal, equally shared power, strengths focused, not, you are your illness, but you are a person with strengths. Transparent, person driven. Okay, so these are very fundamental values of peer support. And so one way to differentiate between a peer approach and a more traditional clinical approach is the clinical approach tends to focus on illness and symptoms and treatment, even though there certainly is focused on rehabilitation and recovery these days. The peer concept is one of collaboration and self-driven choice making, and it's not only focused on illness by any means. Okay, let's go on. So I put this in here because, well, what's the whole point of supervision, right? The point of it is supervision is for the benefit. It's helpful to peer workers, supervisors, and organization. Peer workers have opportunities to explore and discuss work issues with supervisors. We sure hope they do. Supervisors offer advice, guidance, and perspective to peer workers, supervisees, and are informed about the accomplishments and challenges of their supervisees. I lost the last one. Can you go back one to the previous slide? Sorry. But it's very important. Organizations benefit from the supervisor's role as a mediator and liaison between the agency and the worker. And I think it's really important for people who are supervisees. You can go on to the next slide now. It's important for people who are supervisees, who are going to supervisors for help, to realize that your supervisor is also accountable to someone else. In other words, they're in the middle between you and the person or entity to which they are accountable. And the reason that's really important is there are times when supervisors are being told, you need to do X, you need to worry about risk management. When you're talking to your supervisee, be aware of some of the concerns that we have as an agency in terms of quality review, in terms of safety, et cetera. So the more that supervisees can have an understanding of what the supervisor's role is, the better it is, because it's just like any other relationship where people have different roles. If you can understand each other's roles, you're in a better position to get it when someone says, well, I want you to do X, and you feel that you're being told to do something you'd rather not do, or that you didn't even think is necessarily in the interest of the person you're trying to work with. Then you can try to have a discussion about why is this and what is the issue. So I think it's just really important. And on the other hand, supervisors need to understand what supervisees are dealing with. And by the way, in a couple of hours, we have another workshop called Role Exchange as an experiential learning strategy, which is about switching roles and trying out the other role as an educational and learning experience. Anyway, supervision is a relationship. Let's hope that you, in whichever role you are, can make it collaborative and developmental, and when Jason Robeson talks a lot about that, which means in continuous improvement. So, okay, if I make a mistake, it doesn't mean, oh my God, I'm going to get a big black mark and be graded down in my performance evaluation. It means this is an opportunity to learn something. And that's how I hope, the goal is really to have that kind of experience of supervision. I already said the middle thing. When the supervisor is not a peer, there's a potential disconnect between the supervisor's training orientation and value set and that of the peer. So again, this is part of learning about each other's training and value set so that both can do a good job together. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. And so I've already said it's really important that all parties are educated about the peer role and that there be leadership support for peers, recognizing that many staff, whether they're peer support workers or supervisors or other workers, do have traumatic histories, and that can certainly influence the relationship. And advocating to include peers as full members of teams. There are some agencies in which it's sort of like, oh yeah, we'll just add some peers into the mix here and they'll do what we tell them. Okay, next slide. I think we've said these, so we'll go on, except for the dialogue versus debate. Just keep that term in mind. And again, Jason will do some training about that today. It's very important to try to help oneself be in that headset, whether you're a supervisor or a supervisee. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it rather than this is the answer. Okay, we can go on to the next one. So I think it's really important to have a perspective on supervision, that it's something you want to look at over time as well as in the moment. And as I said, there are resources at the end of the presentation. So I'm rushing to get into the assessment form. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so as I mentioned, Brass Tacks has a whole training about supervision, which I would encourage everybody. It's public, it's free, anybody can use it. It's a whole slide deck. And it's something that any agency that wants to get more training about peer supervision can use very easily. And it's referenced at the end. I'm just going to focus on a couple of slides. Excuse me one sec. And you can go on to the next slide. So these are two slides that they, wait, we're getting out, okay, go ahead. Next one. No, you're going backwards, I think. Okay, the next one after that. So they raised the issue of non-peer supervisor challenges, that sometimes supervisors may not have had experience and working knowledge of peer practice. And it's not that there's anything wrong with a clinical approach, you know, and I think sometimes that can get confused. It's that it's a different approach to the peer approach. And so it's really important to identify as peers and supervisors. So what are the difference in approaches and how do we include that in our working together? I think that the slide isn't showing the whole thing. I'm not sure. Let me see. Yeah, you got it now. Okay, so non-peer staff may not be familiar with peer support goals and practice. Let's go to the next slide. It's also really critically important. This one is really important to me because I've done a fair amount of work in this area of, well, what are the conditions that are more or less favorable to including peers in the workforce? So it turns out that it's critical that organizations become aligned with a recovery-oriented values, culture, and practice, and that can be a major change. You know, that can be a big deal, and it has to be supported by the leadership. And this next one, challenges in assuring full inclusion of peer workers and recovery values in mental health settings. I personally make a big distinction between the term integration and full inclusion. I think as a country, you know, we've used this term integration, sort of like be like me, whatever the me is, the dominant culture. Inclusion means, and you know, you hear a lot of discussion about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that means, you know, there's all kinds of different cultures in our society, and together they can form a wonderful mosaic. It isn't a matter of taking any one culture and making it be the one and only, and everything else is sort of subservient. Well, I see that as a relevant to the peer workforce issue. I don't think we want a situation where peer workers are add-ons. You know, here, you come along and you just do whatever we think needs to be done. It's a specific profession with specific goals and values. So that's why I harp on this issue of inclusion, because I think what we want to end up with something where the whole is more than the sum of its parts, where there are real changes in organizations as a result of having the peer approach included and as a necessary and crucial component of the workforce participants and the kind of collaboration that goes on in working with and helping people who are coming to get services. Okay, end of lecture. And so the next slide talks about challenges for peer supervisors who supervise peer workers. And that goes to the issue of learning how to be a supervisor, right? So I don't think it's enough. I know it's not enough. I went from being a manager to becoming a supervisor. And I didn't know anything about supervision. You know, I had to learn some things. Some of it I learned on the job and some of it I learned from some training. But I think we can all benefit from some kind of training about supervision, what it means to change roles. If you've been a peer supervisor and you become a peer support worker, you become a supervisor, it's a different role. And I hopefully will have a chance to get into that a little more. Another issue is that sometimes peer-run organizations are not as well organized from an infrastructure point of view as other kinds of organizations because they've built themselves from nothing to something. And so that's another area where attention needs to be given. Okay, let's move ahead. Okay, so now I really want to focus on this brass tacks supervisor peer workers self-assessment, because this gives you a chance to look at your own knowledge base and where you feel you need to learn more. So let's go to the next. Now, do we have the polls for this?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so do you want to put it up?
Jessica, there are a couple of nice comments in the chat.
If you can speak to them, that would be great.
One comment is, I'm a peer supervisor, also I'm a peer specialist myself. I gather all the information I could gather to help my manager understand where we're able to see the value we bring to the table. Vera Calloway notes, I want to be seen and recognized and valued for our special expertise. And Z Madero responded, sometimes we have to be the change agent so the agency can see the value instead of just being a quota.
Absolutely. Okay, so this is what we've done is we've taken the poll and the form and made it into a poll. So the first question is, I understand. Now, if you are a supervisor, answer it for yourself. If you are not a supervisor, you could answer it for your perception of your supervisor, right? So you have a supervisor. Or you could answer it for yourself. I mean, it's fine with me, whichever way you want to do it. I'll read you the rating scale. Professional need means I don't know how to do this, okay? Personal need is I know how to do it, but I don't know how to make it happen. Sporadically competent is sort of self-explanatory. I occasionally do this fine. Consistently competent, I do it easily. Mastery, I'm ready to teach it to other people. So if you keep track of your own responses to this, and we will make the form itself available to people, either in the chat or there's a link to it, so that you will have it afterwards. And it's also incorporated into the slides that you will definitely have afterwards. All right, so the first one, the understanding of organizational systems, as I would have predicted, as a group, it's an area that would be good to learn more about. Does anyone have any major comments? You want to put anything in the chat, or we'll go through them, and then I hope we should have a little time. All right, let's go to the next one. I understand peer support values and practice. Same 5 categories. So that's interesting. As a group, as a group, there's a fair understanding of peer support values and practice. It would be interesting to differentiate further between who has that understanding. So that's something to think about yourselves. Okay, let's go to the next one. I understand peers. Wait, that was the one we just did, right? So yeah, thank you. I understand peer support worker roles and responsibilities. This is the one about boundaries and blurring and clarity of role expectations. So again, there's in this group of perception of that a relatively high level of knowledge and competence. Okay, let's go on to the next one. I maintain balance between administrative, educational, and supportive supervision functions. This is interesting. There's a so there's a mix. Nobody feels really, or very few people feel like I've got that one down. So more, as I was sort of suggesting before, I think more education and learning about supervision and how it works. Thank you. Let's go to the next one. I establish relationships characterized by trust and mutuality. So interesting that people, at least self-ratings, are quite high on this. There are even some people with mastery. Okay, let's do the next one. I provide an environment promoting reflection on peer support practice and ethics. This is interesting. There's quite a range, you know, through all the categories on this one. I think ethics is a particularly challenging area that could be, we could all benefit from learning more about ethical issues in our training. Okay. All right, I help a person set and plan for achievement of professional goals. There are 11 of these, so we're moving right along. Very interesting. There's a very strong showing on the competence around planning for achievement of professional goals. Okay, let's go on to the next one. 8, I think we need the next one after that. Okay, thank you. I can teach and model skills needed for effective peer practice. Interesting. Again, there's a fairly wide range. Okay, let's go on to number 9. Thank you. I can deliver strengths-based supervision and can use affirmations. So there seems to be, as a group, there's quite a bit of familiarity here with the affirmations. Okay, let's go to number 10. I can give feedback assisting the person in recognizing a professional development need. Excuse me. And this is the role of the supervisor in helping supervisees realize where they need to gain some additional competencies. So there's both some feeling of competence here and also some need. All right, let's go to the last one. I can advocate for recovery-oriented services within the agency. That should be interesting. Well, there's a pretty significant between consistently competent and mastery. It would also be interesting to compare the group on all of them, side by side. Okay, we'll end the poll. Thank you. Share results. How do we do that? Well, we did that, right? Okay, I think we're good. I think what I'd like to do, okay, let's go back to the, thank you. You answered the questions from your own view and now of your manager as well. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint just for briefly, because I know we're getting close on time. But I wanted to make one observation, a couple of things, and then I think we have an exit poll that we can do. Yes, really quickly. So can we go back to the PowerPoint, to the end of the PowerPoint, towards the end of the PowerPoint? And I'll keep the chat open. Thank you. All right, let's see here. If you would like, feel free to enter in the chat what is your most important learning from the self-assessment and the areas in which you'd like to improve your knowledge and skills, as well as your suggestions for additional future self-assessment. This is optional because I want to do the exit poll, and I also want to get some feedback from you. It's very difficult with so many people here and me blathering all this time. But it would be useful to know if you found it valuable. So let's go to the exit poll, which is slide 32. Right, so you have that as a poll. Okay, great, thank you. So the assessment, the self-assessment will be useful to me in my work, yes or no? Well, the yeses so far. This is obviously, nothing is perfect, so it may reach some people and not others, but I'm really glad to know that it's useful to you, because this is something you can take back to your work and with your colleagues. And again, I do encourage you to use the whole brass tacks supervision suite, of which this assessment is one component. And I think this second question, let's go to the second question. Thank you. Of the exit poll, so we can end the poll. Okay, the workshop was informative and will help me in my work going forward. Yes or no? Well, so far so good, although this isn't everybody in the group, I don't think. So we only have a very few minutes left, but let's go to the chat, and please put in there whatever you would like. There's contact information for me. You'll get all these slides. So, you know, if you have further questions or need further information, you have my contact information. But I want to give you now a chance, even though, you know, we have to do it in the chat instead of directly because there's so many folks here. But if you would just, anything you want to say now, anything that either that would be helpful.
There are a few comments I could read, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you. That would be great.
When Schrank notes, the information is valuable. It's a lot of information, but it's also good reminders. Keely Gilmore says, agencies in cities and counties who are offering these positions need to have a clear understanding and train individuals with giving them a clear job description as to what their responsibilities will be instead of showing them as they go along. Anthony notes, I know my job. I have been working in advocacy for over 20 years. I appreciate the awareness this training offers. We want to keep learning. Anthony is from Baltic Street AEH.
All right.
Mark notes the all-around need for training and understanding of all the elements and would like to get a copy of the slides. They will be distributed. Mark. Patrice notes, I like the emphasis on inclusion versus just focusing on integration.
Thank you.
So those are some of the comments.
Thanks very much. And, you know, I'm usually one of the people like you are listening to other people doing workshops and webinars and Zoom events. And I want you to know it's very intimidating to see all these names and not be able to relate. I've taught in the classroom, and as a teacher or as a person trying to share things with people, it's challenging, you know, and you really can't, I really can't reach out and touch you. But I really appreciate your being here, and I hope this has been useful to you. And, you know, you will have my email, and certainly I wish you all well. As I hope you gathered from the presentation, I really care a great deal about this workforce and the work that you all are doing, whether as supervisors or as supervisees or both. It really can make a very big difference in people's lives. So keep on with the good work, and thank you very much. And now I will try to read the chat at least. And take a break, as Libby suggests, you know, give yourself a little time to regroup before the next one. It's awfully intense, you know, a whole long day of all these events, but and it's wonderful that it will be posted and made available. I found that very helpful from the earlier conference. You know, sometimes you come back to things and you think about them later, and then there you can get the whole thing, the whole presentation. So it's a great resource. And yes, thank you so much, Dasha and Libby, very much for your help.